everyone, this is a video on graphing the sine wave. We're going to get the characteristic curve, and we're also going to talk about domain and range. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do key points, which is the quadrandals. It's called, write it here, the quadrandals. That's your 90-degree ones. So what we're going to do is just take our 90-degree radians here and plot they're right here. And our input is our angle. Our output is our f of x, or our y. We could call this y. So sine of 0, remember sine is your y, is 0. Sine of pi over 2 is 1. Sine of pi is is 0. I was doing cosine. Sine of 3 pi over 2 is -1. And sine of 2 pi is 0. So you can see here it's 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. Now for the negative angles, means you're going this way. So basically sine of negative pi over 2, which is actually 3 pi over 2, is -1. Sine of negative pi, that means you're going up to negative pi, is 0. Sine of negative 3 pi over 2, which you're going up to here, is 1. And negative 2 pi, you go all around, so we're just going clockwise, is back to 0. And so you take these values, this is like your x, and this is your y. And we're going to plot these. So if this is your angle, this is like your x, so this is 0. Sine of 2 pi is 1, or pi over 2. Sine of pi is back to 0. Sine of 3 pi over 2 is back to -1. And sine of 2 pi is 0. And then we're going to work the other. I always do the right-hand side of the graph first. Then we go back. Sine of negative pi over 2 was -1. Sine of negative pi is 0. Sine of negative pi over 3 is 1. And you're back down to here. And it continues on and on. So we're drawing two waves. So here's your first wave, and you want to make it curvy, not so pointy. And then it continues on and on. It depends on if they want you to keep graphing. But if you want to keep going, this continues on and on. It has the same curve. Whoops. So go up here. I can't draw very well. And so it would continue on and on and on. So that's negative pi. Now, if you notice, we left out a lot. So we left out, let's see if we have 1. We had 1/2 square root of 2 over 2 and square root of 3 over 2. So we're basically leaving this part out because we just want the curve, but that's what gives us the curve. If you plotted everything, and then of course you have it going down here as well, -1/2, negative square root of 2 over 2, and negative square root of 3 over 2. And then you could just match it up here. And some people do remember their values better with the unit circle, so that would be the values. So you just want to mainly deal with your quadrandals. For example, for here, if you go down here, this would be pi over 6. And we don't want to have to write every single angle down if you know what the characteristic curve looks like. And this would be your f of x, or you could just say that's your y. Okay? And what I want you to do is draw this. If you're just learning this, I call this the zigzag. Sine, I call the zigzag one. Cosine's going to be the W. But anyway, it starts at 0, and you just go like this. You go dot, 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 dot. Then go backwards, dot, 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 dot. You should have 9 key points. Okay, and then you just draw it wavy-ish. Let me do a different color. Let's do this one. You just draw it wavy-ish. Don't do pointy. Okay? So there you go. And just draw it as wavy as you can get it. It's hard for me to draw backwards. Okay. So that would be your sine wave. It is an odd function. It means it reflects about the origin. That means I can reflect it over the x and then again the y. Okay, so here we go. So if I made you do this 5 times, you would go dot, 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 dot. And like I said, I don't want it pointy, make it curvy. Okay, I call it the zigzag. All right, and then you go dot, 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 dot. And you should be able to graph this very quickly because when you get to transformations, you're going to know this pattern. Then it continues on. Okay, so try that 5 times. I guarantee you'll be glad you did it 5 times in a row. And we're just using the quadrantal angles, your 90s. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to talk about domain. Now, your domain is going to be all real numbers. So we're going to, that's because your angles, when you're going around, it goes around in a circle. So it keeps going around and around. So you can have infinite number of angles. So your domain in interval notation would be negative infinity to infinity. In set notation, you could say x, let's just say theta, belongs to all real numbers such that theta is in between negative infinity and infinity. However, on the range, we only went, if you looked at the graph, from 1 to negative 1. So if you use interval notation, that's negative 1 to 1. And for set notation, you would go y belongs, that's a C with a line, all real numbers, draw 2 lines and an R, such that y is in between or equal to negative 1 to 1. And that's it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.